Hello! Today we're going to talk about the heart, and we're going to try to kind of compare the heart box that we made to this anatomically correct heart diagram. So the first thing we want to do is figure out which is the left side and which is the right side. This heart is in anatomical position, so it's going to be like opposite of what we're looking at. So this is the right side of the heart, and this is the left side of the heart. Another way that you can tell is that the left ventricle is thicker and more muscular because it pumps blood to the entire body. So like this is much thicker. That's confirmation that this must be the left side of the heart, and over here is the right side of the heart. Now let's go through and start identifying some of the various structures. I'm going to start with the vena cava. There is an ascending vena cava, meaning ascending comes down from the head, and descending, this is going to come up from the rest of the body, but they're both going to dump right here into the right atrium. Then the blood is going to flow through the tricuspid valve and down into the right ventricle. Then the blood is going to get pumped up here on the way to the lungs. So it's going to pass through this pulmonary valve and out the pulmonary artery to the lungs. The pulmonary artery does branch into two because it has to go to both lungs. So here we can see the left pulmonary artery going to the left lung and the right pulmonary artery going to the right lung. It gets oxygen, it comes back from the lungs into the left ventricle through the pulmonary vein. We can just see the entrances right here. And again, it's coming from the lungs, so there has to be two of them. Right pulmonary vein coming back from the lungs, left pulmonary vein coming back from the left side of the lungs. Then the blood is in the left atrium. It's going to move through the mitral valve and down into the left ventricle, where it will be pumped up through the aortic valve. Kind of hard to see right there. We can see two little cusps in this image. And out the aorta through the rest of the body. At which point it will come back in through the vena cava, into the right atrium, through the tricuspid valve, into the right ventricle, up the pulmonary valve, out the pulmonary artery to the lungs, back in the pulmonary vein, down the mitral valve. Oh, I forgot left atrium, mitral valve, left ventricle, aortic valve, aorta, going to the rest of the body, going back through the vena cava. I'll stop now, but hopefully you get the idea. And then let's talk a little bit more about the heart valves. So blood flows through the heart in one direction. I don't just mean it goes down and then up, but what I mean is like we want the blood to go from the atrium through the ventricle and not back through. So like how I'm moving it right now back, that is the wrong direction. And we have heart valves there to prevent backflow into the wrong chamber. Oh, and notice that the two atria contract at the same time, and then the two ventricles. So it's like top, bottom, lub, dub, lub, dub. That lub, dub sound is the heart valves opening and closing. The top two valves, the atrioventricular valves, are the lub, and then the semilunar valves are the dub. Let's take a closer look at the AV valves. So they create a junction between the atria and the ventricles, and they prevent blood from flowing backwards into the atrium. You might have noticed this in the other diagrams, but the valve is like up here, and all of these little strings right here are called the heart strings, also known as chordae tendineae. So they're tendons, like little collagen strings, and their job is to attach the valve that's up here down to this muscle. And this muscle is the one that contracts and helps keeps the valves closed. Let's take a closer look at that. So this is showing a picture of when the AV valves would be open. So then blood is going to flow from the atria into the ventricle, from the atria into the ventricle, and it happens on the right and the left side at the same time. This basically just happens through pressure, like through gravity. Like the blood falls in, it forces the valve open, and then it gets into the ventricle. And here is a picture where we can see the blood's coming through the open valve. Then, when the ventricles contract, we need both AV valves to close, or else when they contract, the blood might spurt into the atrium instead of out of the arteries the way that it's supposed to. So when they close, the ventricles contract and they actually push blood up, and it kind of turns the valve inside out like this. So it's the pressure of the blood that's keeping it closed. And then you can imagine how it would just kind of blow open, but it doesn't because we have the heartstrings that are holding it down right there. So they're like preventing it from flowing inside out. A pretty cool system running just off of pressure, but preventing backflow. The other two valves are the semilunar valves, and they don't have chordae tendineae, and they're called semilunar because their little leaflets are supposed to look like crescent moons. Like that right there is supposed to be a crescent moon, that's supposed to be a crescent moon, that's a crescent moon. Yeah, I don't really see it, but I'm not the person who named them. And these are going to separate the ventricles from the arteries they go into. So this is preventing backflow into the ventricles. And here are our atrioventricular valves from earlier. Notice that the mitral valve only has 2 leaflets. It's named after a bishop's mitre, which is like a tall hat that has 2 points. But all the other valves have 3. This is a diagram of the semilunar valves when they're open. So you can imagine that the ventricles contract and it pushes blood up through the valve into the arteries. So again, like pressure just forces them open. Then, when the ventricle stops contracting, the blood falls back down and just like fills these little pockets and keeps them closed. So we don't have to have any heartstrings here because like gravity is naturally keeping them closed. And here's an overview of the pathway of blood through the heart that I was talking about earlier. And then I also have a couple of videos in here that I think you might enjoy.
The normal heart has 2 sides, a right side and a left side, and 4 chambers, the top receiving chambers, or atrium.
Yeah, okay. There's a video. There's another video. Knock yourself out. Please let me know what questions you have.